Hi everyone, it is me, E. So, Curse of the Black Pearl came out in June of 2003. I had just finished the third grade, and this kind of a movie made me feel really cool when I watched it, and I felt like it made me closer to my older brother who would have liked the same kinds of movies. To me, Pirates of the Caribbean Curse of the Black Pearl is like in my top 10 movies of all time. When I got a Zune in like middle school, which if you don't know what a Zune is, it's like an MP3 player. It was like Microsoft's version of the iPod Classic. And actually, I think it was better because it had a bigger screen. But anyway, when I got a Zune in middle school, my mom ripped Pirates of the Caribbean off a DVD for me. And so I had that on my Zune and I watched it all the time. Like I would watch it on the bus when I was going to and from school. It was awesome. What made Curse of the Black Pearl so great? Well, it was exciting and funny and quippy and original. And I mean, even though it was based off of a Disney ride, a Disney Parks ride, the movie was just like my husband said, like catching lightning in a bottle. It was incredible. And the thing is, it's crazy. The CGI still holds up today, in my opinion. The effect of like the undead cursed pirates when they're stepping out into the moonlight and like you can see them becoming all like, gross and weird. That was amazing. And it still looks cool. The fight between Jack and Barbossa when they're coming in and out of the moonlight, like it's incredible that they did that in 2003 to me. And like, though the movie was creepy, it wasn't really necessarily scary, which was good and made it something that like kids could watch. Also, like the tenderness between Will and Elizabeth was really sweet. Like when he's bandaging up her hand and she goes, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, my rough blacksmith's hands." And she was like, "Don't stop." Oh my gosh, it was so tender. And then the other thing is like Jack Sparrow, he is so mysterious and like clever and suave and like, who is this guy? I really like the mystery of him. And I like the dynamic of like people saying he's the worst pirate ever and then saying, no, he's the best pirate, because it looks like he's failing to do what he wants to do, but then in the end he always comes out on top, which I like that about Jack Sparrow's character in this movie. He comes across as unconventionally clever. His plans typically work well, and when they go wrong, he either recovers and creates a new plan and adapts, or then he gets this luck that takes over. So I'd say in the first movie, he's like 80% clever and 20% lucky. The plot of the first movie is pretty straightforward and easy to follow. Everybody has a clear motivation. Jack wants revenge on Barbossa and to get his ship back. Will wants to save Elizabeth, and Elizabeth basically wants to save Will and herself. Norrington wants Elizabeth, and he wants power, and Barbossa wants to break the curse on him and his crewmates and become mortal again, basically. I think the movie has a satisfying ending, and we get the sense that there's kind of a friendship and respect between Jack, Will, and Elizabeth. At some point in this movie, they all do stuff to help each other, and they're not totally selfish, which it's kind of like, oh, wow, even this pirate's not a total jerk. And they kind of, I guess, learned that pirates can be good people too. I don't know. It's cute. I think that The Curse of the Black Pearl helped popularize the action-adventure genre. And anyway, I really liked it. Then, 3 years later, Dead Man's Chest comes out, which is the second movie. And as a middle schooler at the time, I was like totally enthralled and obsessed with it. I was excited. I think that this movie was in many ways better than Curse of the Black Pearl, though it wasn't quite as dark visually. I felt like it was just as dark thematically, which is good. It also had decent CGI and character design for Davy Jones and his crew was cool. The choreographed fights, though, that's where it really was better, is like choreographed fights were just excellent. And it was a lot more thrilling. And it also introduces what was a pretty straightforward plot. But the problem I have is like Will and Elizabeth are now like wanted criminals for engaging with pirates in the first movie. But like it's totally random because anyone with any authority in the first movie, basically they don't like press charges on Will and Elizabeth. They let it slide. Jack is the only one who's on the run, and that makes sense because he's actually a pirate and he's done a lot of crimes. This movie's biggest weak point to me is the introduction of a weird, pointless love triangle with Jack, Will, and Elizabeth. I didn't hate it, but it was just unnecessary. And I'm bothered that the second movie ends on kind of a cliffhanger and that it's not its own standalone film. But there is one storyline that's kind of tied up. Lord Beckett, who's like a villain of sorts, he's acquired the heart of Davy Jones and has control over him as a result. The second film ends, and while it's not perfect, I still have goodwill toward the franchise. One problem I do have with this movie is it starts down this path of Jack being less clever and more lucky, and as the trilogy goes on, it gets worse. They also get a little bit too quippy and silly. I guess this movie's goofier, and the third movie gets a lot goofier. And the first movie had funny moments, but it wasn't a goofy movie. This movie starts to get a little bit goofier, and the dialogue itself is a little less engaging. Okay, now the third movie comes out in 2007, and basically all goodwill I had toward the series is gone. I can't describe the plot of this movie besides saying a third of the movie is about saving Jack from Davy Jones' locker, then 2/3 of the movie is just random backstabbing, double-crossing, and exposition until you get to the admittedly cool final battle. There's a big plot point in this movie of unbinding Calypso, who's this chaotic sea goddess from her human form. They're trying to unbind her from it. But this really doesn't do anything or go anywhere. It doesn't really serve the plot in any way after that. It was just kind of, you think this is going to be a big deal, and then it's not. It's what half the movie seems to be about. Will and Elizabeth also spend the whole movie at odds with one another, which makes their wedding to one another during the final battle feel very unsatisfying. The ending is also just sad. It's not a terrible ending, but it's sad. The movie overall is confusing and meandering, and it didn't need to be. It should have had a very straightforward plot, and it didn't. The second and third movies also kind of seem to contradict some of the world building of the first movie. First of all, Jack is a little too well known and has gotten too much backstory. The first movie kind of plays up the fact that he just randomly showed up in Tortuga one day looking for a crew. And then in the second and third movies, okay, it turns out he's some kind of pirate lord who comes from a long line of pirates and all this kind of stuff. It's just, I don't know, it takes away from the mystique. Also, in the first movie, there's magic and an ancient curse and stuff like that. But to most people in the world and in the movie, it's just a superstition. But in the second and third movies, magic is everywhere and everyone. The pirates, the East India Trading Company, everybody is trying to take advantage of this magic. And so this becomes more of a fantasy story with too much mythology, in my opinion. The character design, like I said, of Davy Jones and his crew was cool. And they managed to make Elizabeth a pretty cool character as well, which I like. But there are things, plot holes, just things that don't make sense. So at the end of the third movie, Will gets cursed and he has to be the new Davy Jones, basically. And he's only allowed to go on land every 10 years. But why can't Elizabeth come out and visit him at sea? Because Davy Jones and Calypso saw each other in these movies out at sea. So I don't know why they can't be together, out on the ocean. I mean, I guess Will has to ferry the souls to the underworld or whatever. But surely he could take a 5-minute break to say hi to Elizabeth every once in a while. I don't know. To me, it's kind of dumb. Then the fourth movie, all right. We get done with the trilogy. Nobody really wants another Pirates movie, I guess, but they decide to make one about 4 years later, in I think 2011, on Stranger Tides. In my opinion, it's a return to form. Jack is back to his old clever self. He's suave and devious and mysterious. We love him. It's great. He's not just relying on luck anymore. He's actually making plans and making things happen himself. I kind of maybe miss the presence of the other main protagonist, as now Johnny Depp basically has to carry the whole movie on his own back, but it turns out okay. He does a good job in this movie. And honestly, if it weren't for very few details like Barbossa being alive again and Jack having a map to the Fountain of Youth, we could basically just forget the second and the third movies ever happened, and to me that wouldn't be so bad. So the fourth movie could have been a decent sequel to the first one, in my opinion, with only a few things needing to be explained. I also think this movie had a decent mix of supernatural and practical elements. The only thing that I didn't really like was there was this kind of a dumb love story between a missionary and a mermaid, but that's not so bad. This movie is nowhere near as good as the first movie, but it's on par with the second movie in my opinion, which is a good thing. So I would say On Stranger Tides really surprised me, and so I thought, okay, they can make a decent Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And so I was looking forward to watching the fifth one, which was called Dead Men Tell No Tales. Came out in 2017. We all thought we were done with Pirates at this point. It had been several years, but nope, they decided to make another one, and I watched it. And we also thought we were done with Will and Elizabeth. They weren't in the fourth movie at all. But this movie is basically about their kid, Henry. He's here, and he needs Jack to help him free his dad from the Flying Dutchman. And also there's this really ham-fisted and unnecessary feminist theme brought about by a character who turns out to be Barbossa's secret daughter. It's not that I hate feminism, it's just that it's so heavy-handed, and it doesn't really fit with the world building that we saw in the first 4 movies that were just full of like strong female characters who were not ever really disrespected on the basis of them being women. Like, they were pirates, they steered ships, they did all kinds of things, but in this movie now it's suddenly controversial because we need somebody to make a point about it. It just was dumb to me. And these feminist jokes didn't really seem to fit the franchise or the time period. It was trying to be woke for just no reason at all. My biggest problem with this movie, though, is probably that Jack spends this movie all, he's like just totally drunk out of his mind, which, like, he always is drunk, but in this movie he's like noticeably drunk, and it's like impairing him. Like, it's the first time we've ever seen him impaired by his drinking. And it's out of character for him. I know, like, he's supposed to be like down on his luck in this movie, and that's another problem. This movie's all about Jack losing his luck, as if that was what was making him great in the first place. It's just stupid. And he sucks. Like, just Johnny Depp totally phoned in the performance, and I don't blame him because the script was bad. Barbossa is back in this movie, and he also gave a terrible performance. Javier Bardem plays a Spanish seaman who's kind of like the villain in this movie, and he was really great, but it was a waste. The character design of the villains was also cool, but also a waste. And Jack tragically gets a lot more backstory in this movie, and there's like a creepy CG age reversal thing going on. His backstory also contradicts exposition from the original trilogy. Calypso says that he traded her for his compass at some point in time, but in this movie he like inherits it from a captain whose ship he was serving on before when he was a kid. So that is a contradiction of previous canon. Also, Jack inexplicably hates Will and Elizabeth for some reason. Like, the last time we saw them together at the end of the 3rd movie, there seems to be some camaraderie and respect and like a sadness, like Jack feels sorry for them, whatever. But in this movie, he just hates them, and there's no explanation as to why. I went to bed angry the night that I watched the 5th Pirates of the Caribbean movie because they just totally derailed the franchise and made it so that if they made another Pirates of the Caribbean movie, I don't think I would want to watch it, because it's like the 4th one was like, okay, this is decent. They can make a good Pirates movie. I believe in them. And then it's like they forgot everything that they had ever done before when they made the 5th movie. It was horrible. The only thing that was nice about this movie, the only singular thing that was really nice about this movie, is that Will and Elizabeth get a true happy ending. But it's like, I don't really care that much. Anyway, that's the 5 Pirates of the Caribbean movies. So as a brief recap, the first movie is darn near perfect. The second movie has a ton of potential. The third movie just squanders it. The fourth movie is like, okay, we're getting potential again. And then the fifth movie is terrible. And I don't know. I guess we'll have to see if and when this franchise goes further, if they manage to steer it back in the right direction or not. But anyway, that's the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed the fan art. I spent a lot of time working on this. It took me forever, and I hope you liked it. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.